Good look at the Queen walking up the steps.
They certainly will. They said, the organizers of this event said, if you can see the steps of the south portico of the state capitol, you will catch a glimpse of the Queen and Governor Kaine as they ascend the stairs for the tour of the General Assembly. A lot of people do have not bird's eye view, but law's eye view of the Capitol, and they cannot wait for her arrival.
Thank you, Greg. As you said, history in the making. As the Queen makes her way from the airport to the Capitol, we'd like to remind you that you are watching CBS 6 special coverage of the Queen's visit.
Now, did you know that nearly 30,000 people entered a special lottery to win VIP access to the Queen? Only 54 people won. We'll hear from one of those lucky lottery winners, plus we'll be joined by a local royal expert who's rubbed elbows with the Queen, Prince Philip and Prince Charles, and he knows what the royals are really like. Stay with us. You're watching CBS 6's special Queen coverage. We'll be right back.
You're watching CBS 6 News special coverage, the Queen's visit to Virginia.
And welcome back to our special coverage. You're looking at a live picture from Capitol Square. This is Steve Wilson, the jazz band from Hampton that the crowd out at Capitol Square is enjoying right now. They're getting the chance to listen to bluegrass, gospel, jazz, and blues as they await the arrival of the Queen at Capitol Square. And the Queen is on the way. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip landed at RIC about 15 minutes ago.
I think the crowd there looking at what did you say, on
the big
Jumbotron
screens,
there?
so they know she's here because they were able to watch the plane land and watch her disembark on those big screens that they have around Capitol Square.
A lot of people there, as you saw in our live coverage. About 13,000 people, from what we understand, can be accommodated there around the Capitol Square. Most, as Greg said, going to be in a very good position to watch the Queen on her walkabout and then up the steps there. They will get a brief glimpse, at least, of the royal couple as they walk from the Executive Mansion and then up the steps to address the General Assembly later today.
For this segment, we'd like to return to our colleague Cheryl Miller, who's been chatting with our royal expert, Tonypelling.
I am getting the inside scoop over here. Tony worked for the British government for more than 25 years, knows Prince Philip, knows Prince Charles. Charles is the president of Business in the Community, which is an organization that Tony helped establish. And Tony, you were just telling me your son is a member of British Parliament.
Yes, he has the smallest majority of any member of Parliament. And so it's a pretty marginal position to be in. But he's been a member of Parliament since 2005, and of course today is election day in the UK, with elections to the Scottish Parliament and to local councils in England and Wales. And it could be that when the Queen gets back, there might be a threat of a kind of constitutional crisis that she would face, because it's expected that the Scottish National Party will be the biggest party in the Scottish Parliament, and that they will then call for a referendum to separate Scotland from the United Kingdom. So she could well face that, looking ahead. And she'll probably next week also have an audience with Mr. Blair, in which he will tell her, I am resigning as Prime Minister.
Oh my goodness.
So next week is going to be, from today onwards through next week, quite significant politically in the UK. And I suspect one of the reasons for the Queen coming this weekend rather than next weekend is that it's a busy week next week.
It is a busy week, and as the Queen, she cannot, even though she's gone, take aside what she has to deal with when she gets back.
No, as I say, what will happen is Mr. Blair will tell her and the public that he's standing down, and then there will be an election for a new leader of the Labour Party, who the Queen will then call to Buckingham Palace and, as they call it, kiss hands when she asks him to form a government. And it's interesting that those words still around, kiss hands, which go back a long way.
And does she stay in touch with Prime Minister Blair while she's on the road? Would she get a daily update?
I'm sure she gets what are called telegrams. The British Foreign Office relies on a system called telegrams. So she'll probably get a daily summary of issues that the British government is concerned about.
Well, as we said, the Queen and her motorcade are on the way to Capitol Square as we are watching live entertainment. entertainment there. If you'd like to see the coverage as it is going on throughout the day, we have it up on our website at WTVR.com. Just visit highlights. We've got the schedule there. You can find out what the Queen and her entourage will be fed of our wonderful Virginia highlights, the detailed travel schedule, and again, even what she plans to eat. I understand she's not very fond of fish, but
in my experience, watching her at banquets, she tends more to move the food around the plate than actually eat it.
Well, we will take a quick break and come back with more live coverage of Queen Elizabeth II's visit to the Commonwealth right after this.
CBS 6 News special coverage of the Queen's visit to Virginia is brought to you by the Moore family of dealerships. You're watching CBS 6 News special coverage, the Queen's visit to Virginia.
And welcome back to our special coverage of the Queen's visit here to Virginia. We are still waiting for the Queen to arrive in Capitol Square from RIC, where First Lady Ann Holton and her husband, the governor, will meet her at the mansion. They're expected to spend about 15 minutes in the executive mansion, their first stop here in Richmond. They've invited former governors and their spouses, selected other guests of the mansion for a brief reception of the royal couple, and these are just some of the 13,000 people or so that have crammed into the Capitol Square since about, I guess the gates opened at 11 this morning, but they were camping out at about 6:30 this morning, Stephanie, and just waiting to get a glimpse of this historic event here in Virginia. And
54 people won a special lottery that will allow them to get a very good view of the Queen, possibly even get to shake her hand. We're going to have to wait and see and hopefully get to talk to a few of them if they get that lucky.
Yeah, many of those people in Capitol Square right now tried to win a Queen lottery, get a VIP access just to see Her Majesty.
Nearly 30,000 people entered their names into that lottery. Only 54 were picked, as we mentioned, and each was allowed to bring a friend. Deborah Cox spoke to one of the lucky lottery winners about her good fortune.
As a lottery employee, Connie Reed can't play the state's million-dollar money games. Instead, she rolled the dice and tried to win a VIP ticket to see the Queen. The gamble paid off.
I put in for the tickets, thinking I wasn't going to win, of course. And then when I got that email on Monday and it said, congratulations, la 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 la, I'm going, I won! Oh my God! I can't believe it!
Reed is one of 54 people chosen out of 29,000 who put their name in the lotto hat. The payoff, a front row view as the Queen and Duke walk around the Capitol. She's already picked out her outfit. We're
wearing hats. This is the occasion. If you're ever going to wear a hat, this is the one.
And her guest, a fellow co-worker, Natalie, whose ticket is her birthday present.
And it's a huge gift, one that I'll always have, and something I'll share forever and ever. I have a story, a part of history.
Earlier, crews hustled to put the finishing touches before Her Majesty's arrival. The British royal visit of Queen Elizabeth and the Duke of Edinburgh is drawing national media attention, and organizers say Virginians have an opportunity to catch their best glimpse of her at the state capitol.
Everyone who's excited to see the Queen, this will be the place to be, because Capitol Square is such a beautiful public venue, and if you can see the steps to the Capitol, you'll be able to see the Queen as she enters the Capitol.
It's Queen Elizabeth's first visit to Richmond and 50 years since her last royal appearance at Jamestown. The Library of Virginia has placed these photos on its website because public interest is so high. Reporting at Capitol Square, Deborah Cox, CBS 6 News.
Now, as we wait for the Queen to arrive at the state capitol, we want to take you back in history.
Coming up next, a look at Queen Elizabeth's previous visits to Virginia and how what she says helped shape American politics. We'll be right back.
CBS 6 News special coverage of the Queen's visit to Virginia is brought to you by the Moore family of dealerships.
Welcome back to CBS 6 special coverage of the Queen's visit to Virginia. You're looking at a live picture of Capitol Square, where we understand that Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip have arrived at the governor's mansion from their arrival at RIC.
Of course, the Secret Service handling her protection right there, but things are getting a lot tighter there, the security around the Capitol Square. Richmond and VCU police handling the area around there, trying to make sure that everything goes smoothly. And there you see it, the live picture of the Queen and the Prince meeting the Governor and the First Lady at the Executive Mansion, where later they're going to be honored guests. And some of the people that will be joining them are Ann Holton's father, former Governor Linwood Holton, and mother Jinx Holton. Tim Kaine's parents, Al and Kathy Kaine, have come all the way from their home in Kansas City, Missouri for the occasion. And from what I understand, their kids got the day off from school, and I think it's going to be an excused absence. What do you think?
Quite a treat. And the First Lady has really been a witness to a lot of history. What a wonderful life she's been able to live. We want to let you know that the last time Queen Elizabeth II helped Virginia mark the anniversary of Jamestown, it was described as an all-white affair, still segregated in the state, and it is starkly different now. She will salute Native Americans while she's here. She will get a chance to meet a venerated civil rights lawyer. We know who that is, Oliver Hill, who turned 100 years old last week. And she will have a chance to meet with some of the students and faculty who have been scarred by the Virginia Tech shootings last month. Now, this is not Queen Elizabeth's first visit to Virginia, as we've been telling you. She traveled to Jamestown in 1957 for Jamestown's 350th anniversary, and then again in 1976 for the bicentennial.
Right, and every time the Queen comes, it's a big deal, socially, economically, politically. CBS 6 reporter Mark Phillips gives us a history lesson on the Queen.
No matter how many times she's been here, a visit by the Queen somehow makes a splash. Quite literally during her rain-soaked trip to the West Coast in 1983. The weather was so bad, one's yacht couldn't keep up with one. And special arrangements had to be made to feed the royal party at a San Francisco restaurant. The Queen never eats out, preferring maybe to order in.
I get no kick from champagne.
But America always rolls out its best for the Queen, and she does seem to enjoy herself when she's here.
Did I get a kick out of you?
America has been our ally and our friend, and very particularly during the 20th century, and has fought beside us during 2 world wars. And she has an affection for America. I don't think the colonial aspect of it is particularly interesting to her. Other than in an historical sense.
Celebrating history, though, is what this current trip is ostensibly all about. And this old footage of her 1957 visit to the Jamestown settlement has a déjà vu all over again quality. Then it was the 350th anniversary of the settlement. This time it's the 400th. The stress then and now on common values.
Let us pursue these ideals with faith and determination so that 350 years from now, our descendants will be as proud of us as we are of our forefathers.
The way this Queen is going, she may be around for the next big anniversary, too. Elizabeth has already been through 10 American presidents. She goes back to Eisenhower. And while by definition she stays away from politics, she does have political uses. On that California trip, her presence allowed a Republican president, Ronald Reagan, to draw a crowd of adoring West Coast liberal celebrities. A current president with flagging popularity might also benefit from her reflected glory. Does she have a political use?
Yes, I think there probably is. I think it would be very unrealistic to deny that. I should think George Bush will milk it for every cent he can get out of it.
Planned though these visits are, something always seems to happen. In 1991, it was the visit of the talking hat. The Queen is littler than you think.
Mr. President.
And as she proved the next day before Congress, funnier too.
I do hope you can see me today from where you are.
The Queen represents a monarchy the United States went to some trouble to get rid of. Yet these visits always end up stressing similarities, not differences.
What Elizabeth represents is a tradition of moderated, level-headed representative government, which is the common glory of the English-speaking world.
And if you're looking for continuity from those colonial days 400 years ago until now, you need to look no farther than this building. This is the Virginia State Legislature, the direct descendant of the assemblies set up in the early days of the colony. It's the longest running, continually serving Democratic body in the world. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Richmond.
Thank you, Mark. And as Mark was mentioning that, you know, the Queen may not be as interested in the colonial aspect, and when BBC reporter Mark Norman was here with us, he echoed those same sentiments that back in England, this isn't such a big deal because, of course, the Brits can trace their history back to before the time of Julius Caesar. You know?
Isn't that amazing?
And here we are, just our paltry 400 years.
So what is going on inside that governor's mansion now that the Queen is there?
Well, we're going to tell you, plus introduce you to a local high school student who's probably pretty nervous right now. We'll tell you why next.
You're watching CBS 6 News special coverage, the Queen's visit to Virginia.
And welcome back, everybody. You know, Her Majesty's ears have heard the world's finest musicians. Right now, the Queen of England is in the governor's mansion listening to music that's provided by a local high school student.
17-year-old Mario Hargrove was selected to play the harp for the Queen during her visit. Earlier this week, CBS 6 anchor Deborah Cox sat down with the community high student as he prepared for his once-in-a-lifetime moment.
Within this class, one student will play for a royal audience.
It's surreal right now. It's, I still can't believe it a little bit.
17-year-old Mario Hargrove is getting his 15 minutes of fame.
Honestly, I believe that I was selected because my teacher felt that I was capable of pulling it off.
What he'll pull off is what most musicians could only hope for, to bend the ear of a queen.
Not really nervous. I'm just really humbled and honored by the opportunity to be able to be in her presence. You know.
The 17-year-old found out last Friday he'd head to the governor's mansion and pluck his harp strings at a ceremony for Queen Elizabeth II.
I hope it's the first of many moments that are big in his life, but yes, what a moment.
With the help of his teacher, he selected his music carefully.
I just came to the decision of what I wanted to play by what was originated in England.
The young musician even researched proper etiquette should Her Royal Highness approach him.
If she does to come over, to just be calm and engage in her conversation if she you know, initiates it.
And Mario says he plans to work really hard for Her Majesty to notice him.
And he will be telling his grandchildren about that. Isn't that a wonderful opportunity for him?
Very composed young man.
Well, Queen Elizabeth II and her husband Prince Philip are here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. They're in the capital city of Richmond.
And the crowd is waiting for them to come out with the governor and the First Lady for a walkabout. And when they do, of course, we'll bring that to you live. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more continuing coverage of the Queen's visit to Richmond.
You're watching CBS 6 News special coverage, the Queen's visit to Virginia.
And we are still waiting for the Queen and Prince Philip to emerge from the governor's mansion. And right now we want to bring back former British Undersecretary and our local royal expert, Tonypelling. And Tony, you were telling me that as the Queen does her walkabout, which she is starting right now, that perhaps she and the Prince will walk along separate sides of the crowd so that they each can greet people.
Yes, and we were just also saying that if you really want to attract their attention, perhaps a posy or a little bunch of flowers. But it's interesting that I can't see the lady in waiting here. So if the Queen has given anything, maybe she's going to have to pass it to the governor. Now, obviously the governor is directing her where she should go. And the other thing that the Queen has to put up with, of course, is people with their cameras.
And there's the first of the flowers.
Yes, And eventually she'll have more flowers than she knows what to do with, and so somebody has to carry them.
And as we've learned in protocol, one should not extend their hand to the Queen, and one should not speak to her first.
No, you'll wait till you're spoken to, and don't be surprised if her eyes are already moving on to the next person, because she knows she has to get, as it were, moving. But do answer her fairly directly. Royal small talk is quite a difficult art. In my experience, she will say how pleased she is to be there, and your reaction is, well, Mum, we're very pleased that you've come.
One would refer to her as Mum?
That's what I've always done, and I've got away with it. I think somebody suggested that when you first meet her, you might call her Your Majesty, but what I would normally do is nod my head, as it were, when she approached, and then if she asked me a question, I'd reply very, very shortly and say, Mom, now let's see where the flowers have been passed.
She is handing them off, and hopefully we will see someone taking them. I'm actually amazed to see as many cameras and not cell phone cameras, because it seems to me that people are using their cell phones in that way these days.
Yeah, well, I guess if you have a cell phone, you can communicate back home to show, look what I'm doing now. I'm face to face with the Queen.
Now, this must be quite the coup for Governor Kaine to have the Queen at age 81 to come on a state visit to Virginia.
Well, I personally was very surprised that the Queen and Prince Philip agreed to come, and this goes down to the importance of the Jamestown celebration as it's seen in the UK, to the excellent work that the Jamestown 2007 people have done here, and indeed there's a British committee, Jamestown 2000 committee, and the two chairmen of that committee are here in the Royal Party. That's Lord Watson of Richmond, CBE, and Sir Robert Worcester, Sir Bob Worcester. Now here's a really nice bouquet of flowers being presented.
And what happens to these flowers that are donated? I would assume in London they perhaps go to charity?
They'll go normally to hospitals, there are regular arrangements for that sort of thing to happen.
And do we have any idea of what will happen to these flowers that are given to the Queen here?
I imagine they'll go to the Children's Hospital and to MCV. I don't see them going back on the plane. Well, she's extremely good with children. One of the times I was with her at an event with elementary school children, much to my surprise, a couple of the children wandered around and turned up behind the Queen, and she turned around and she literally gathered them in her arms and held them close whilst the various speeches and talks were going on, and those kids just stayed there in the Queen's arms. You know, that shows you the degree of informality that she's prepared to indulge.
She is quite the family person with 4 children of her own and grandchildren, and you were mentioning quite a number of godchildren.
Yes, I've forgotten the figure, and I remember now, she has 30 godchildren. We were saying maybe the only way she can communicate to them is to bring them together for a godchildren's party. But I imagine most of them are family and worthies in the aristocracy, as it were, and it must be nice to get a birthday card from the Queen on a regular basis.
Cheryl, this must be quite an event for Ann Holton, because I'm sure she could give the Queen some interesting perspective on her walkabout, because she was a teenager there at the Governor's Mansion from 70 to 74.
And Ann Holton is kind of like a child of Virginia royalty, having been the child of a governor and being treated kind of the same way growing up as a teenager in the executive mansion. And of course we know that Elizabeth, as a child, her father was the king, or her grandfather was the king, and living and growing up in that royalty all along. Tony, you have been around the royal family quite a bit. How would you describe Elizabeth the woman?
Well, I think that she is always in control because of the pressures that she faces, but she does have a tremendous sense of humour, and she would like, as it were, her family to be functional. Occasionally it breaks into dysfunction. But I think most people, as they saw her mother, they now see her as a motherly character. The thing that strikes me is she doesn't look like 81, so she's quite a young mother rather than a grandmother at this stage.
She really is, and you've had quite a bit of contact with Prince Philip.
Yes, Prince Philip is very interested in the degree of support that the British government gives to its athletes, and he's president of various sporting organisations, and I was at one stage laughingly called the Undersecretary for Sport. And I would be harangued by him for the government's failures. He would make it clear that it wasn't my failures, it was governments over a long period who were at fail. But he's quite prepared to tell you what he thinks about issues. The Queen is not able really to do that, but from time to time Prince Philip has got himself into hot water by expressing opinions. But as I said last evening, I think he has a license to have a view, and he doesn't hold himself back if he thinks that his opinion is worth hearing.
You can see Governor Tim Kaine is really enjoying himself on this walk, and they're getting a little bit closer to the Capitol. We've been learning about British protocol over the last several weeks, and one of the things we learned is that you're not supposed to extend your hand to her. You're supposed to wait for her to extend her hand to you, and we noticed a couple of people actually reached out to her, and she did reach back to them. That was interesting to watch.
She's understanding of us Americans. We don't know any better.
They're just very excited.
That's right.
It's no different anywhere else. The walkabout was invented in 1970 when the Queen was on a state visit to Australia and New Zealand.